Timothy, a quality control expert who cares deeply about pet safety, clashes with his new boss, Emma, whose focus on cutting costs leads to a dangerous crisis. When pets start falling ill from their food, Timothy is called back to save the company from disaster. Can he uncover the truth and restore the company's reputation, or is it too late? This is a story where the stakes are not just business, they're about the lives of our most beloved companions.
People like you with low education and lack of understanding hindered cost awareness. From now on, all methods will be changed with cost as the top priority. We don't need your opinions anymore.
Such changes might eventually cause problems. If an issue affecting pets' lives occurs, it could ruin the lives of their owners.
Okay, time's up. Remember that cost doesn't just apply to money, but also to time. I'll have you do the handover during your remaining time. But I don't need your work standards, and even if you leave them, I'll discard them. Now, get started on wrapping up your remaining tasks.
I work for a pet food manufacturing company, but the quality control system I established at the headquarters was completely changed by that boss. Later, at the local branch where I was transferred, the CO visited for an inspection and suddenly asked for my help, pleading, "Please help us." My name is Timothy White. I'm 26 years old and I work for a mid-sized pet food manufacturing company. In the pet food industry, our products are known for offering a diverse lineup. We have products tailored for specific breeds of dogs and cats, for weaning, for elderly pets, and even food that's easy on pets with specific health conditions. We offer a wide variety of products based on age and health conditions. From a cost efficiency standpoint, product segmentation should perhaps be limited. However, since the company's founding, it has been supported by people who genuinely care about pets. And even now, amid intense competition, we maintain a corporate culture that prioritizes quality over cost. I joined this company because I was drawn to its sincere management policy, which genuinely considers the welfare of pets. In my family, we had a very quiet and smart golden retriever named Nancy long before I was born. Since my birth, Nancy had always been by my side, watching over me. Whenever I cried, Nancy would come to my side, looking worried. If I was about to do something dangerous when my parents weren't around, she would pull at my clothes to stop me. It became natural for Nancy to be by my side since I was aware of my surroundings, and she was always with me even when I slept. We were practically inseparable. As I grew older and started middle school, there was a time when Nancy suddenly became lethargic. She had been mildly ill before, but this time the symptoms were clearly more serious. Nancy hardly ate and lay around all day. Even after a vet checkup, no abnormalities were found at that time, and it was suggested that her weakness might be due to old age. I understood that dogs have much shorter lifespans than humans, and had vaguely prepared myself for the inevitable day. However, facing the reality of Nancy's decline, I was so distraught that I couldn't focus on anything else. I was so worried that her condition might worsen while I was at school, that I stubbornly insisted on staying with her and even started skipping school. My parents were at their wits' end, dealing not only with the dog but also with me. While searching the pet food aisle for food suitable for elderly dogs that Nancy might eat, I checked the ingredients and descriptions on the back of every container to see which type of dog it suited. The vet had advised that certain ingredients would be good for an aging golden retriever, so I desperately looked for the most suitable option. At that time, I also read the label on Nancy's usual food, which I had been giving her until she fell ill, and I suddenly felt something was off. It wasn't about the content, but I had an inexplicable feeling that something was different from the label I had been seeing for years. I took a picture of the back label with my smartphone, hurried back home, and pulled out the empty containers of the food I'd previously purchased, which were folded and stored in the corner of my room. I compared the contents of the label with the picture I'd taken. As I suspected, the pie chart showing the nutritional content percentages on the label was slightly different between the new picture and the old container. When I told my parents about it, they researched the details online. It turned out that the manufacturer hadn't significantly changed the ingredients but had switched the country from which they sourced the main ingredients. Even if the ingredient names are the same, the nutritional content can slightly change if the sourcing country is different. This caused the pie chart percentages to change slightly. However, this numerical change alone didn't seem to indicate a significant difference in the food's quality. But my dad contacted the manufacturer to ask why they changed the sourcing country and found out it was due to significant cost reductions. Essentially, they had switched to cheaper raw materials. Further research revealed concerns that the new sourcing countries had lowered their quality control standards to cut costs. Yet, it wasn't confirmed that this was the cause of Nancy's poor health. Still, at that moment, I was willing to try anything that might improve her condition. I quickly researched the sourcing countries of various pet food companies online and identify a manufacturer using the same sourcing country as the food Nancy had been healthy on. This manufacturer was not well known, and their products were more expensive. However, given Nancy's condition, which could potentially lead to my long-term school absence, my parents didn't mind the higher price. When I started giving her the newly acquired food, Nancy's health gradually recovered, and she eventually regained her former vitality. Relieved to the point of tears, I regained my composure and started attending school regularly. Seeing me like this, my parents were finally able to feel at ease too. Later, around the time I graduated high school, Nancy slowly weakened due to old age and eventually passed away peacefully in her sleep. At that time, I could tell that Nancy had lived a full life. Of course, I was heartbroken, but I was able to come to terms with it slowly over time. Around the time I had settled down, I happened to come across some concerning information in an online community of pet owners. Around the same time Nancy had fallen ill, there were concentrated reports of dogs and cats getting sick or even dying after eating food from the same manufacturer. However, the overall percentage was not that high, and the manufacturer did not take any public action. But sometime later, it was found that the manufacturer had reverted to their original suppliers for raw materials. This is just my baseless speculation, but I believe that the manufacturer's use of cheaper materials has led to some decline in quality. Probably, the manufacturer had received a significant number of reports about pet health issues, not just Nancy's case, that couldn't be ignored. The manufacturer must have realized that the cause was the change in raw materials and hastily reverted to the original suppliers. Because of the quick response, the issue subsided before many pet owners could raise concerns. Even now, there is no solid evidence, but that's how I feel. I developed an indescribable distrust towards that pet food company. Prioritizing cost over quality was a mistake. More than anything, the company's sly move to revert the product specification without explaining to customers disturbed me. At the same time, I became very interested in the company that provided the high-quality food that helped Nancy recover. Eventually, I requested information from the company and, on a whim, asked to tour the factory. They gladly accepted. I was amazed by the strict management inside the factory, and I was genuinely moved by the guide's action. That showed how much they cared for pets. After this experience, it was only natural for me to want to work for this company. The fact that I had personally visited the company for a tour left a strong impression on them, and I was hired smoothly. Naturally, I wanted to join the department responsible for product quality control and was accepted. After working for a few years, I had completely adapted to the company and became so familiar with quality control that I could confidently say there was nothing I didn't know about it. One day, as usual, I was walking around the warehouse area stacked with raw materials, holding data sheets of ingredient analysis. While confirming ingredient data could be done at my desk, I always made sure to see the actual materials, checking their color and smell myself. Years of directly inspecting the materials with my own senses allowed me to quickly notice any subtle changes in color or smell. Just like how noticing a slight change in a pie chart led to Nancy's recovery, I still value my intuition based on my senses. Of course, just because I felt something was off with the materials didn't necessarily mean there was an issue. Sometimes it just ended up being a change in the shipping method or minor variations due to local weather or seasonal changes. But when I felt strongly that this material is different, contacting the supplier usually revealed some cause. Even if the change didn't affect quality, my sharp intuition for detecting these variations from just looking at the delivered products became well known within the company. This company had many employees who valued quality, which attracted me to join. So, my persistence in checking raw materials personally was highly appreciated, especially by the field workers. Of course, I didn't do this for other people's praise, but to prevent the worst-case scenario, where low-quality food could shorten a pet's life. However, as I approached my 8th year with the company, I began to sense changes in its corporate culture. With a generational shift in management, there was an increasing emphasis on costs and profits over quality compared to before. I felt the company was heading in a negative direction. However, there is also the reality that private companies cannot survive without making a profit. So, I think it's valid for some to focus on cost cutting. But at the same time, people like me who are dedicated to quality are also necessary. By sharing our ideas and gradually finding the best compromise point at each stage, we can move forward slowly. While rechecking the recently arrived raw materials, I heard the sound of small, quick footsteps approaching. I knew exactly whose footsteps they were, so I continued my work without even looking up when the footsteps stopped right next to me.
Hey, Timothy, what are you doing away from your desk?
Just hearing that nervous tone of voice asking an obvious question made me weary. I kept my face turned away, fearing my frustration might show if I looked up, and replied, "I'm checking the quality of the raw materials."
You always do that whenever you have time. Didn't I instruct you to go out for sales if you have free time?
This woman, Emma, was assigned to my department as a manager last year. In her inaugural address, Emma declared, "I will instill the cost consciousness that this company lacks," which gave me a very bad impression. And that impression never changed. So that day, I was once again forced to deal with a futile boss.
You really don't seem to like my policies, do you?
It's not about liking or disliking. I'm just doing the necessary work.
What exactly is necessary about hiding in the warehouse and looking at materials?
I've explained this many times. I'm checking the condition of the materials with my own senses to ensure there are no changes in each lot.
Looking at the ingredient analysis sheets provided by the suppliers should be enough.
I know that the sheets provided meet the standard values at the time of delivery. If they didn't, they wouldn't be delivered.
According to that logic, the quality is guaranteed at the point of delivery, isn't it? I don't see why you should be wasting time here.
How many times have I had the same exchange with her? Wasn't the time spent on these pointless arguments the biggest waste of all?
If you have so much time, go around the city's pet shops and make some sales. Your sales record has been at the lowest rank for a while now.
Before Emma was assigned, my job was solely related to quality control. During busy periods, I would occasionally help out in other departments, but only in emergencies. However, under Emma's slogan of instilling cost consciousness, she demanded that everyone be involved in revenue-generating tasks. Even though revenue-generating tasks meant that, since purchasing materials couldn't be done on an individual basis, everyone was essentially being required to do sales work. When I did door-to-door sales around the town shops and managed to secure even a small order, it was recorded as company revenue. Emma would then report these aggregated numbers as increased sales achieved under her leadership and use it as a way to climb the corporate ladder. This was obvious to everyone, so the policy of forcing everyone into sales was not gaining much traction. Still, to avoid Emma's ire, everyone made some effort to appear as if they were doing sales, and occasionally, they would actually secure new customers. But I had no intention of wasting my time or focus to appease such a boss. I believed that the most important thing was for this company to continue providing safe and reliable products for pets. Since I joined this company to continue supplying high-quality products, there was no way I could be enthusiastic about unfamiliar sales work just to gather small changes. Therefore, I didn't even pretend to be doing work for Emma and maintained my previous stance completely. Annoyed by this, Emma constantly found reasons to catch me and endlessly complain. Frustrated that I continued checking materials without even acknowledging her presence, Emma forcefully closed the lid of the container I was examining. "What are you doing? I'm not done with the check yet."
What check? You are just looking, touching, and sniffing. What can you understand from that?
When I feel something is off, it means the state of the product has changed. So I ask the supplier if there's anything they can think of.
But you just said that at the time of delivery, the ingredients meet the standards, right? So, asking again won't bring any new problems, will it?
That's not always the case. Suppliers can sometimes slack off on their checks due to various reasons, and in the worst cases, they might copy old values onto the analysis sheet without actually testing. But by showing that we're strict with our checks, we can prevent such lapses.
Isn't it just that you don't trust the suppliers?
It's not about trust. Even if the suppliers have no ill intentions, we need to be aware that there might be oversights or issues that don't show up in the numbers. If quality checks become routine, we'll lose the sense of urgency and problems will inevitably arise.
Inevitably? Sure, maybe a minor mistake happens once in 100 years. But if you're wasting endless hours every day, missing orders you could be securing, I can't overlook that.
If you put it that way, most work would seem pointless. Since we're dealing with pet food, we should approach quality control with an almost excessive attitude.
We're talking about pets, right? What's the big deal if a pet gets a little stomachache?
How can you say such a thing? Emma's overly insensitive attitude made me snap. But Emma wasn't the type to be fazed by a subordinate standing up to her. She furiously lashed out at me.
What kind of attitude is that? Is that how you talk to your superior? And when I'm criticizing your work attitude, you have the nerve to snap back at me. I heard you personally visited before joining and got a good impression from the higher Ubis, but don't think that makes you special.
Let's not talk about that level of nonsense.
What do you mean, that level? You, a high school graduate, are repeating something you heard in a movie. You don't even know their exact meanings.
Emma, who was obsessed with career advancement, had two main interests. One was how quickly she could get promoted, and the other was boasting about her education. She supposedly graduated from a good university, which made her strangely obsessed with business management, always ranting about numbers. And when I talked back, she belittled me as just a high school graduate. I had given up on arguing back. Quietly reopening the lid Emma had closed and resuming my check. Emma continued to insult me for a while, but when she saw I didn't react, she snapped. "Don't think you can get away with such an insolent attitude forever," and stomped off. After that, I continued to ignore Emma's orders to go on sales calls and kept up with the raw material checks. One day, I was called by Emma first thing in the morning. Emma usually came to me when she had complaints, so calling me meant she had something different to say. It was sure to be unpleasant, but I couldn't ignore a summons from my boss, so I went to her desk.
Timothy, you've been reassigned starting next month.
Emma handed over the transfer order with a smirk on her face, and it stated that I was to be transferred to a rural branch. I felt a mix of surprise and a resigned sense of it's finally come. Since Emma's arrival, there had been a few other employees who didn't follow her policies, and most of them were demoted or transferred to branches for poor work attitude or underperforming. So, I always feared that I might face the same fate if I showed any weakness. However, I never tried to appease Emma and stuck to what I believed was my duty. Even though my sales performance didn't meet Emma's expectations, I was accurately identifying and addressing even minor issues in quality control before they became significant problems, and my internal evaluation wasn't low. Thus, Emma couldn't easily target me. But Emma, being persistent, had slowly built her case. A month before, a director who had liked me retired, weakening my support within the company, and Emma seized the opportunity to report my insubordinate behavior to HR. She had previously filed several complaints about my work attitude, forcing HR to take some action. There was resistance within the company to removing me from the quality control department, but Emma meticulously and sometimes aggressively wore down that resistance. With the issuance of this transfer order, it was clear that any action I took now would be too little, too late. I realized it was impossible to overturn this transfer order, but I still asked Emma, even after I leave, please have my successor follow the quality control procedures I created.
So, you claim to do your own work your way, but you expect your successor to follow your instructions? How self-centered can you be?
If the successor finds a better way to handle things, I have no objections. However, it's a fact that there were almost no quality complaints during my tenure. The standard procedure manual summarizing key points of the work should remain effective. It's fine if it's revised as needed, but please keep it as the base for now. Please, I begged Emma, not out of concern for my reputation with her, but to prevent any pets from getting sick from the food our company provides.
You suddenly became humble once you were reassigned. If you'd shown this attitude earlier, things might have turned out differently.
Emma laughed heartily, clearly amused. If my attitude was poor, that's one thing, but please don't abruptly change the current methods.
People like you with low education and lack of understanding hindered cost awareness. From now on, all methods will be changed with cost as the top priority. We don't need your opinions anymore.
Such changes might eventually cause problems. If an issue affecting pets' lives occurs, it could ruin the lives of their owners.
Okay, time's up. Remember that cost doesn't just apply to money, but also to time. I'll have you do the handover during your remaining time, but I don't need your work standards. And even if you leave them, I'll discard them. Now, get started on wrapping up your remaining tasks.
With those final words, Emma ignored me and went back to her work. Just as I had done before, she was now blatantly ignoring my pleas as a form of revenge. I didn't care about how I was treated, but I felt a growing sense of crisis knowing that someone so indifferent to pets' well-being was gaining more control here. However, there was nothing more I could do. After conveying as much as possible to my successor during the remaining time, I transferred to the rural branch. Later, I heard rumors that the quality control department had changed significantly, but all I could do was hope that the core principles were maintained. After that, I began working at the rural branch. Compared to the city, there were fewer people, but as I worked in this place rich with nature, I felt my troubled heart healing from the unreasonable transfer order. The branch was managed by a gentle man named Martin, just shy of 50, who approached everything with a laid-back attitude. At first, I wondered if this was okay. However, after working with him for a while, I realized that his demeanor matched perfectly with the relaxed atmosphere of the area, softening the overall mood of the branch. Employees here often joked and laughed together during work breaks. Initially, I found it unusual, but soon I realized that the real abnormality was an environment focused solely on efficiency, where people were hurried and found it hard to smile. Hey Timothy, there's an upcoming meeting with the local youth association, but I have another appointment. Can I leave it to you? If it's okay for me to handle it, then sure. I've been leaving things to you so often that I've just been a figurehead. Unless it requires headquarters approval, you can go ahead. Martin gradually entrusted me with more and more authority. He was the type to let those who were motivated work as they liked, and if they failed, he would help them handle it together. Now, even at this branch, I was being entrusted primarily with quality control tasks, which I excelled at. Some people mockingly refer to moving from the city to the countryside as a step down, but I had started to really like this place, and recently, I was even thinking it wouldn't be bad to work here until retirement. One day, something happened that drastically changed the calm atmosphere of this branch. Several large luxury cars parked in the lot, and suddenly, the company's top executives, including Mr. Davis, the CEO, and the chairman, visited. A surprise inspection, but with all the big shots, it's quite extravagant. While the employees were excited and nervous, Martin remained as laid back as ever. Are surprise inspections frequent here? Timothy, you might not know because you've been at headquarters for a long time. Here, Headquarters managers occasionally come to check on our work, but it's not usually strict, and it's mostly just department heads coming for greetings. It's true that occasionally managers from headquarters come to check on our operations, which is common in any industry. However, having both the CO and chairman visit together seemed highly unusual to me as well. We were instructed to continue our work as usual, so I headed to the warehouse where livestock feed materials were stored. At this branch, we mixed and sold livestock feed to local farmers. For the neatly packaged pet food produced at the main factory, we took orders from nearby stores and delivered the products from headquarters. But in addition to that, we mixed crops and grasses obtained from local farmers with imported materials to create feed tailored to each farmer's needs. The imported feed had relatively stable quality, but the crops from local farmers varied with the seasons and climate. Perishable items needed to be consumed according to a plan, and their management required meticulous attention despite their appearance. When I was assigned here, I thought my main job would be selling products made at headquarters, and that quality control would mostly involve paperwork, so this turned out to be a pleasant surprise. I immediately told Martin that I wanted to handle quality control for the feed mixing, and from that day, I was busy inspecting various crops delivered daily, establishing methods for quality control. At first, it was trial and error, as the crops brought in by each farmer varied, and the feed required for livestock also had different needs. I adjusted the feed mix daily based on the changing circumstances of the farmers, constantly checking materials and getting feedback from farmers who use the products. Thanks to this, we had a stable system for supplying high-quality feed. The meeting with the local youth association that Martin had entrusted to me was also about discussing future feed supply. As I was checking various materials as usual, the warehouse entrance suddenly became noisy. Looking up, I saw Mr. Davis and other executives being guided into the warehouse by Martin. I was a bit surprised to see people in high-end suits in a dusty warehouse, but I didn't stop my work. I turned to face them, greeted them politely, and immediately returned to checking the materials. Except for the greeting, my attitude was exactly the same as it had been with Emma. Mr. Davis and Martin were talking the whole time, and as they slowly approached me, I began to overhear their conversation. "So, he manages all of this mixed feed alone?" "Yes." Despite the tedious and troublesome nature of the work, he willingly took it on. He's good at finding efficient methods. Just by following his standard procedures, the quality has improved, and the trust from local farmers has significantly increased. Farmers from the neighboring city have also started consulting us, and if things go well, we might be able to expand our sales routes. So he manages this volume alone every day. He personally inspects all the materials that are delivered. Initially, there were some low-quality items mixed in, but he rejected them all, and word got around. Recently, suppliers have started to exclude any questionable items themselves before delivering. That's impressive. I'm afraid to admit, but I haven't changed anything about the way things are done before and after he arrived. What I've just mentioned is all his doing. It was clear that Martin was explaining my work to Mr. Davis. I didn't mind that, but Martin's excessive praise made me nervous, and I tried to pretend I couldn't hear the conversation. Just then, I heard footsteps approaching, and when I turned around, Mr. Davis was right next to me. "Timothy, I apologize for the suddenness, but we need your help." Mr. Davis shook my hand as he said so. I was puzzled how to respond to the forceful handshake, similar to that of a salesperson greeting a significant client. "Timothy, I don't know the details, but it seems your skills are needed at headquarters. We'll have others take over your duties here, so please follow Mr. Davis's order." Martin, in an unusually brisk manner, instructed me. Not fully understanding the situation, I replied, "Understood," and followed Mr. Davis into the car, heading to headquarters. It had been a year since I last walked through the gates of headquarters. It wasn't a long time, but it felt like ages. However, the atmosphere inside the building left no room for nostalgia. Phones were ringing everywhere, and employees answering them were typing on their computers while repeatedly saying, "We're very sorry. I couldn't hear the specifics, but it seemed there were numerous complaint calls, and everyone was struggling to handle them. As I stepped into the familiar office, I saw Emma at her desk, looking pale and holding her head in her hands. When Mr. Davis called out to her, she looked up with a start, and upon noticing me, her expression instantly turned hostile, and she hurried over to me.
Timothy, you're late. Everyone here has been in chaos for a while now.
I haven't even been told what's going on.
Are you talking back again? Just hurry up and assess the situation and handle it.
Emma, Timothy was performing his regular duties when I pulled him away. How can you speak so harshly to someone whose help we desperately need?
Yes, sir. I just panicked. I'm so sorry.
There was no point in watching Emma cower under Mr. Davis's criticism. Can you explain what happened? Though her face was full of resentment, Emma explained the situation. It turned out that pets given a recently launched product showed symptoms of food poisoning, leading to a flood of complaints. It hadn't made the news yet, but it was already a hot topic in pet lover communities. Starting from this issue, there were reports that pets fed not just the new product, but also existing products were falling ill, though not to the extent of food poisoning. Once suspicion spread, many people began to claim, "Actually, my pet too," turning minor doubts into a torrent of complaints about most of our products. Unable to handle the situation, multiple voices reached Mr. Davis, saying, "This never happened when Timothy was here. Why was he transferred?" This prompted Mr. Davis to come and bring me back immediately. My standard procedures. You abolished them, didn't you? If only they had been maintained, this wouldn't have happened.
There's no point in dwelling on the past.
There's no way harmful substances causing food poisoning could be produced in our processing stage. Show me the raw material data for that new product. When I looked at the documents handed to me, I couldn't help but groan. The names of suppliers that I had eliminated due to questionable quality, despite their low costs, were listed. These are all suppliers I rejected for unreliable quality control. Why were they reinstated?
For cost reduction. The company needs to make a profit to survive. It's only natural.
Cost reduction is fine, but not at the expense of quality. This is a matter of pets' lives. It's clear that the quality of raw materials dropped due to the supplier changes.
Maybe for the new product, but the existing products you managed are also getting complaints.
By hiring such unreliable suppliers, wouldn't all the suppliers think our inspections had become lax? You were the one who replaced all the suppliers just to cut costs for the new product, weren't you?
Well,
I used to check the actual materials, so the suppliers were cautious in their dealings. But now that only the numbers on the ingredient sheets are being checked, the suppliers must have become lax. This gradual decline has led to the point where the health of pets eating our products is being harmed. Emma was being held accountable in front of Mr. Davis, turning pale and looking down. Now is not the time to assign blame. Timothy, what do you think should be done to resolve this situation? I've only been doing daily management, and I don't have a magic solution for such a problem. I think we need to recall all products currently on the market and discard all raw materials in the factory.
don't be ridiculous. Doing that would result in enormous losses. The company would go bankrupt. Can you take responsibility for that?
If we can't produce food that doesn't cause food poisoning in pets, it's better for the company to go under.
How can you say that in front of Mr. Davis? You won't get away with this.
Emma, the current situation is the result of you prioritizing cost over quality, disregarding the lives of pets. Do you understand how much the pets that fell ill are suffering? Have you thought about how worried their owners are? Someone who doesn't understand this has no business being involved in this work. I remembered the time when I was terrified that Nancy might die, tearing up as I unleashed my anger. Emma, perhaps overwhelmed by my genuine fury, didn't say anything back. You're right. I'm sorry. I might have gone too far, but my beloved dog was once saved by this company's food. That's why I joined this company. And to see this happening now, it's just too disappointing and frustrating. Emma might have led this on the ground, but it was I who decided to empower her cost-cutting stance. The ultimate responsibility lies with me. Mr. Davis, we must first stop any further damage. Let's immediately recall all products and dispose of the raw materials. We will hold a press conference to announce this. Mr. Davis said this and began issuing instructions to the surrounding managers to make the necessary preparations. Finally, Mr. Davis turned back to Emma, who was still hanging her head. "You moved Timothy, degrading the quality control system. This will be thoroughly investigated later. If you plan to argue, prepare well."
But I thought I was doing the right thing.
"I've heard you called Timothy insubordinate and kicked him out, but from what I've seen today, it's clear you simply abused your power, silenced his valid points, and ultimately expelled him. You must take responsibility for your actions. Of course, I will also bear significant responsibility. Emma, you must also be prepared." Emma watched Mr. Davis walk away to handle the aftermath, and eventually she collapsed weakly to the floor. No one moved to help her up. Later, Mr. Davis held a press conference regarding the situation, announcing the recall of products and disposal of raw materials. They also had to compensate the affected pets and their owners, making future business prospects extremely grim. Mr. Davis concluded the conference by pledging to address the aftermath with full effort and announced his resignation once the matter was resolved. It became clear that Emma had led the situation, resulting in her dismissal. I was asked to return to headquarters as the head of the quality control department. Though I was reluctant to leave Martin and the local farmers, I decided to return to prevent such issues from happening again. Martin, with his usual laid-back smile, said, "People should do what they want to do most," and wished me luck. Restoring the company's lost trust would take significant time and effort. But for me, it simply meant continuing to work sincerely for the health of pets. So in that sense, my days would not change at all. Prioritizing costs led to enormous losses for the company and the loss of invaluable trust. As long as I'm in this position, I am determined to ensure such mistakes are never repeated.